Joining us now to discuss the ongoing tension in the Middle East and to talk some 2012 politics is Senator John McCain. And Senator, welcome back to Fox News Sunday.
Thank you, Chris.
Let's start with Libya. President Obama this week seemed to expand his definition of the NATO mission there. Let's take a look.
Meeting the UN mandate of civilian protection cannot be accomplished when Gaddafi remains in Libya, directing his forces in acts of aggression against the Libyan people.
Between that statement and the stepped-up airstrikes on Tripoli, are you now satisfied with the coalition's effort to topple Gaddafi?
No, I'm not, but they have obviously stepped it up. I'm sorry you didn't show one of the president's statement at the beginning, how this is just a humanitarian effort. It's all going to be NATO. We're not going to have anything to do with it. Yes, I'm glad to see him gradually changing. But the fact is, as he is gradually changing, people are dying on the ground in Libya, and they wouldn't have to if we were using all of U.S. air power and the abilities and the unique capabilities that the United States military has. And unfortunately, we are not, although we are gradually stepping it up, and the attacks are stepping up. There was a daylight raid on Tripoli, which is unusual here in the last 24 hours. So, and Gaddafi may crack. He may crack. But this thing could have been over a long time ago if we had brought the full weight of American air power to bear on him, and it's unfortunate.
Now, another aspect that you call for is that you continue to say that the U.S. should recognize the rebels' national council as the legitimate government of Libya. And Defense Secretary Gates continues to say that there are some extremist elements among the opposition.
Well, I would say to Secretary Gates, as you know, I have great admiration for Secretary Gates, but I would say, Secretary, the best way to get extremist elements in the lead amongst the rebels there, the liberation forces, is a stalemate. That's the way extremists come into power. Look, these people are a professor at the University of Washington, is their finance minister, guy with doctorate from the University of Pittsburgh. Are there some people who are Muslim or, you know, not exactly who we would like in this fight? Of course, but the reason why they're in the fight is because they hate Gaddafi, who brutalized them and mistreated them. And by the way, these recent reports of rapes and misrata by Gaddafi forces should make us all angry. So the reason why we need to recognize the TNC, let's call it that, is because then you could free up the $33 billion in assets that are frozen of Gaddafi's and a lot more. It would legitimize them as the voice of the Libyan people. Clearly, Gaddafi is not the voice, and I think it would have a significant impact on the morale of those brave fighters who are doing a pretty good job for a disorganized and untrained group.
Let me turn to the G8 summit, which this week pledged tens of billions of dollars to Egypt and Tunisia to help with democratic reform and economic stability. Some of your Republican colleagues in Congress say at a time when this nation faces a debt crisis, we can't be sending billions of dollars to the Middle East.
I think we can do things like debt relief, like matching grants, stimulation, businesses and job opportunity. And I understand that we have to be very careful because there is a strong anti-spending sentiment out there. But I think we also have to do a better job of convincing the American people that a smooth transition to democracy in the region is a best guarantee of us not having to spend a lot of money in the future if the wrong people get in power. And finally, could I just say that I think that jobs and investment, I'd love to see American business over there telling them, we'll invest. If you give us a transparent, corruption-free government, one that is good for us to be in business in Egypt and Tunisia, then we'll invest. I think that could be one of the greatest incentives rather than just throwing money at them.
Now, the new authorities in Egypt this weekend have opened up the Gaza border crossing, which means that people are going to be able to go in and out of Gaza. Do you worry about the impact of that on Israeli security?
I worry, and I worry about some of the rhetoric we're already hearing from some of the politicians in Egypt who would like to gain support and votes. I worry about a alliance between Hamas and Fatah when Hamas is still dedicated to the extinction of the State of Israel.
But what impact do you think that opening this border crossing could have?
I don't think it will have a huge impact. Because I think the Israelis can defend themselves, but I think the Palestinians recognize that if they commit serious aggression, that there will be a response from Israel. But it's time for all of them to sit down without preconditions, without saying that the 67 borders are the basis, and certainly not putting Israel again on the defensive, as the president has now twice, when the first time when he demanded a freeze on the settlement.
Let's turn to another trouble spot. This week, the House of Representatives voted narrowly to defeat a measure. 204 votes for the measure, 215 against. So it just barely was defeated. A measure that would require President Obama to step up the withdrawal of U.S. military forces from Afghanistan. 26 Republicans voted for the measure to speed up the withdrawals. With the takedown of Osama bin Laden, are you worried that support for a U.S. role in Afghanistan is beginning to dry up?
Yes, I am worried. I'm greatly worried. And it isn't so much bin Laden taking him out as it is Americans are war weary. Americans see all this money we've spent, and they see the president of Afghanistan appearing ungrateful. They see the government of Pakistan, in a very aggressive fashion in many ways towards us. Their continued relations with the Haqqani network and others. But we've also got to remember that it was Afghanistan where the 9/11 attacks began. If the Taliban and then Al-Qaeda take over in Afghanistan, we could see a very, very serious threat to United States national security. And remember, the Russians, after the Russians left, we got out completely. So we shouldn't ignore the lessons of history.
But how about the argument?
And militarily, there is significant success on the ground. It's tough and it's hard, as General Petraeus predicted. But I've seen this movie before. It was in 2007 that the same movement to get out of Iraq, and we managed to push that back, and the surge succeeded.
But how about the argument? The president has already said he's going to begin drawing down U.S. troops in July. How about the argument when most of the people who would directly threaten us, for instance, Al-Qaeda, that more of them are in Pakistan than they are in Afghanistan? What if we were to shrink the mission from counterinsurgency to counterterrorism to focus on the ones who are a direct threat to the U.S. homeland?
I believe the only way you're able to arrive at that situation is when you get a stable situation and control of the country. That's why negotiations with the Taliban, I think, will be fruitless until the Taliban think they can't succeed. They are now fighting ferociously because they're trying to take back or hold ground that they've held for a long period of time.
So what would you say about the president in the July withdrawal?
I never thought that was a good idea. I've always thought that conditions on the ground should dictate withdrawals, but the president has also emphasized 2014. And I believe that by 2014 we will have succeeded in Afghanistan, as we have largely in Iraq, although we've got a problem with keeping some forces there, I think, for a period of time to help the Iraqis complete the job.
Finally, and we've only got a couple of minutes left, let's do a lightning round on 2012 politics. Okay. You know something about presidential politics. Right. Quick questions, quick answers. Sarah Palin announced that she's doing a bus tour starting today in Washington to set off a media frenzy. Question: can she win the Republican presidential nomination, and can she beat Barack Obama?
Of course she can. She can. Now, whether she will or not, whether she'll even run or not, I don't know. But, you know, a lot of things happen in campaigns, Chris. You remember I was written off a couple of times and we were able to come back. So there's going to be a roller coaster ride for all of them before we finally arrive at our nominee. But she certainly is a major factor, and I believe that she can be very competitive.
And what about her high negatives especially among independents?
I think that again, that's what campaigns are all about. I've never seen anyone as mercilessly and relentlessly attacked as I have seen Sarah Palin in the last couple of years. But she also inspires great passion, particularly among the Republican faithful.
Okay, lightning round rules. How big a problem is Romney Care for Mitt Romney?
I think it's a problem, and I think he realizes that, and I think he's trying to address it. And whether he will successfully or not, I don't know, but he certainly has a good grassroots campaign in places like New Hampshire and others where he is really, you know, having been around the block once is always a benefit for you the next time.
Finally, after the bin Laden raid, you said enhanced interrogation did not contribute significantly to the successful takedown of bin Laden. Former Senator Rick Santorum said this.
You don't understand how enhanced interrogation works. I mean, you break somebody, and after they're broken, they become cooperative.
Question. You have never responded to Santorum. Well, what are your thoughts about what he said?
Well, I think he should look at the record, including that of Director Leon Panetta, Dianne Feinstein, who both said that not only did we not get good information from KSM and others, but we got bad information, and the information that was primarily responsible for bringing bin Laden to justice had to do with standard methodology and intelligence gathering. And when you say that, by the way, it does a bit of a disservice to the thousands of people in our intelligence agency who labored night and day putting this puzzle all together, which we become very aware of.
You said, I remember memorably during the 2008 campaign, you were tied up during the 1968 at Woodstock, things like that. What do you think of him saying you don't understand enhanced interrogation?
I think Rick realizes he made a mistake there, and so it was just the major object here is that understand what torture does to the image of the United States in the world, but most importantly, it's about us.
Senator McCain, we want to thank you, as always, for coming in. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, sir.
Thanks for having me on.